Welcome, I'm Ijoma for tonight. National Assembly passes 2017 budget, and for the first time in 20 years, lawmakers release details of federal legislature's projected expenditure. Delta State House of Assembly removes its Speaker Monday Ibuya over alleged high-handedness and abuse of office, suspends him for 3 months. Northern Elders Forum pledges loyalty to acting President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, affirms support for Nigeria's unity. And war collapses at wedding ceremony in India, killing 24 people.
And in business news tonight, global ratings firm Moody's Investor Services forecasted 2.5% growth for Nigeria's economy by the end of 2017.
On sports news tonight, FIFA appoints former Lagos State Chief Judge Ayotunde Phillips into the adjudicatory chamber of the Ethics Committee.
And from Abuja, Benue State Governor Samuel Otom advocates ranching as the best way to end clashes between farmers and herdsmen. Says increasing populations preclude demarcation of grazing routes.
The National Assembly has passed the 2017 budget of 7.44 trillion naira. The budget is 1.38 trillion or 20.44% higher than the 2016 budget. This is coming 5 months after President Muhammadu Buhari presented the budget to a joint session of the Assembly on December the 14th. The lawmakers appropriated 2.9 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure, and 2.1 trillion is contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure in statutory transfers. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
On December 14, 2016, President Buhari presented a 7.298 trillion naira budget before a joint session of the National Assembly. 5 months later, the National Assembly has completed work on the budget. The National Assembly has set the budget at 7.441 trillion naira, with a recurrent expenditure of 2.987 trillion naira, capital expenditure of 2.177 trillion naira, and debt service at 1.841 trillion naira. Federal lawmakers also put the benchmark price of crude at $44.50, crude oil production at 2.2 million barrels per day, and an exchange rate of 305 naira to a dollar. Presenting the 2017 budget to lawmakers in the Senate, the chairman of the Appropriation Committee says the National Assembly included some interventions in the budget which were not originally in the proposal.
The committee also made some landmark interventions in some critical sectors of our national life. These include the provision for the second Abuja runway, the funding for the resumption of work on the long-abandoned Wari-Alaja rail line, rehabilitation and upgrading of the Abeokuta airport. We have also made adequate provision for the completion and takeoff of the Baro Inland Port under the Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority.
Highlights of some key appropriation in the 2017 budget are Defense, 330.5 billion naira for recurrent, and 139.2 billion for capital. Ministry of Education, 398.6 billion for recurrent and 56.7 billion for capital. Ministry of Agriculture, 31.7 billion for recurrent and 103.7 billion for capital. Ministry of Health, 252.8 billion for recurrent and 55.6 billion for capital. While the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing, 32.8 billion for recurrent and 553.7 for capital. In the House of Representatives, lawmakers faulted an aspect of the 2017 budget.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, 51 billion 933 million 366,906 naira. Carried. Just like the National Assembly is an institution, the office of the SGF too is an institution comprising so many agencies. So this one is not just for SGF as one office.
A budget being passed 5 months into the year is seen as problematic by many analysts and continues the cycle of poor capital budget implementation. However, the National Assembly has blamed the executive for late submission of the appropriation bill for quick passage. But this has been a recurring problem which both arms of government have not been able to resolve to get the country back to a one-year budget cycle. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the National Assembly has opened up its budget for public scrutiny. Finally, the National Assembly released details of its budget alongside the 2017 national budget. A total of 125 billion naira was appropriated for the federal legislature.
To come out of the economic recession.
It took a while in coming, but the National Assembly has finally made public details of its budget for 2017. There were repeated calls from civil society organizations and individuals from across the country demanding that the National Assembly open up its books to show its annual expenditure plan for each year.
Chairman, Committee on Appropriations.
As both chambers deliberated on the 2017 budget, the National Assembly released its budget of 125 billion naira, an increase from 115 billion naira proposed by President Buhari. In the breakdown of the National Assembly budget, the sum of 31.3 billion naira is appropriated for the Senate, 49.05 billion naira for the House of Representatives, 14.9 billion for the management of the National Assembly, while the sum of 4.3 billion naira is appropriated for the National Legislative Institute.
Another first we've achieved is making the budget of the National Assembly available to the public, which has been an issue for a long time. I'm very proud of what you've all been able to achieve. And we do hope that this budget of recovery that we believe has reflected equity, it has ensured efficiency and adequate resources to all relevant sectors, will go a long way in helping Nigerians to come out of the economic recession and create growth.
Other highlights of the National Assembly's budget include: in the Senate, the sum of 1.856 billion is appropriated for the salaries and wages of lawmakers, 4.430 billion naira for capital expenditure, while 25.11 billion naira is appropriated for total overhead costs. In the House of Representatives, the sum of 4.923 billion naira is appropriated for the salaries and wages of lawmakers, 4.493 billion naira for capital expenditure, and 39.6 billion naira for overhead costs. Legislative aides in both chambers will be paid the sum of 9.6 billion naira.
The ayes have it.
Joining me now on the news at 10 to discuss the 2017 budget is the Chief Executive Officer of Budget, Mr. Sheung Onigbinde. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10
It's a pleasure
tonight.
being here.
Yeah. Now we see the budget passed 5 months after.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about implications, but let's just talk about the fact that, do you find that problematic?
Yeah, the budget cycle, it's not helpful, most especially for the capital expenditure component. And this stems from 2015 when the budget was lately presented by President Muhammadu Buhari. And now, when the budget was signed last year, the National Assembly added a clause that the budget will run for not the calendar year, but will run for just one full year. So the budget for 2016 expired effectively on May 5, 2017. And so we're just like a week into the 2017 budget cycle, as it should be. But one of the things is that even though this is lopsided, because the recurring expenditure part of the budget has started since January. So you would not wait till May before you can pay salaries for workers, or we can even pay entitlement for the political office holders. So what suffers delay, like we are right now, would be for the capital project. And that's why a lot of people say, put more haste on these issues. Let the budget be passed adequately. Let's go back to the right calendar cycle, where it was easy that the budget is presented by October to sign into law by December, and that's what you have for most of the state. Lagos State being a very clear example of that. Yeah,
we saw an increase of 1.38 trillion. Let's talking about the national budget now. How much real development do you expect from this? We hear bogus figures every year. You know, this was appropriated. The same problems remain, even though they say it takes time. Do you expect anything new with this new amount?
Yeah, I think from the point, it starts from the revenue assumptions, if your budget is going to be effective. Our revenue assumptions are still huge and wide off the mark. You know, we are still planning to get like 2.35 trillion from raising from deficit financing, borrowing, and also appropriated funds from looted. So if you look at it, our revenue assumptions are just even too high. Unfortunately, the National Assembly has added 143 billion naira to the expenditure component again. So I think we're not doing ourselves justice, because our non-tax component of the budget is not rising as fast as we thought it would. Oil market has been depressed for a bit of 2 years now, and we're just lucky that production has been kept constant due to the militancy in Niger Delta that has been a bit subdued. So I think the revenue component part has been overstretched. The expenditure component is where you will look at mostly the recurrent expenditure gets spent, because you will pay debt service, you will pay salaries, but the capital is where the issue is always. And if our revenue performance doesn't strike what it should be, then you would always have challenge with the capital. The National Assembly has added more funds to the capital component and put a lot of projects there. Well, we'll see if the executive will have the resources to implement that.
And speaking about key projects, let's look at some of them that were appropriated. Power Works and Housing, 529 billion. And then you see education, 50 billion. How do you reconcile that?
We don't know what it takes to build a nation, and it's very evident the way we plan. We just plan for now. We're building roads, we're building rail. For who? Are we really developing human capacity? Why would we put 50 billion for capital expense for the education? And we believe that we can just build our roads and our rails out of this. We are not doing it right. We're not thinking for the future, we're thinking for now. And all of this infrastructure is still going to be borrowed against, foreign debt is going to be piling up. We really don't have the human resource within the country to even properly do this. So I think the government of President Muhammadu Buhari wants to be big on infrastructure. It's been evident the way the whole portfolio was packed for Babatunde Raji Fashola. But education, health, social services, they've been in the backseat. And if you don't have a healthy nation, you don't have a well-educated nation, definitely there's going to be crisis in the long run. So I think it's time they rework this cycle. Unfortunately, the National Assembly has not even been able to think out with this estimate and make even a big deal out of it.
Well, they think they're making a bit of progress. Let's move over to their own budget, and finally, it's open to scrutiny. I saw you smiling when the report was going on about it being open to scrutiny. I mean, does that satisfy you? We see like 4.923 billion for salaries and wages for the House.
Yeah, I think what for us, it was just about 115, 125 billion. What do you do with that? Because that's a whole lot of money. That's like 10 times what you give to a university in a year in a budget. So, and then now we have been able to see that now and I've seen a lot of people interrogating that 9 billion naira for legislative aids, that's higher than the personnel cost for a university or for a teaching hospital in Nigeria. So which aids are you paying that huge sum of money? And so even the entire bureaucracy of the National Assembly takes like 2.8 billion. So it was that interrogation, that conversation, so that we can push the National Assembly to efficiency. That's always been our own idea of making sure the National Assembly budget is open, and I'm happy. And I think people are going to be able to look at the figures deeper, look at where exactly does National Assembly do 125 billion. Kudos to the Senate President. This has been locked since 2008, and he's been bold enough to say we want to make this public. Even members of the National Assembly have confessed many times that they themselves have not seen the details of the budget. So I think it's a step forward, but the biggest step forward is how can we gear the National Assembly towards more efficiency.
All right, thank you for crunching the numbers there for us, Chief Executive Officer of Budget, Segun Onibinde, on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you so much.